My guest today is Zelda La Grange, a lady who dedicated most of her life to the late Nelson Mandela and who recorded her memoirs in a book called Good Morning, Mr. Mandela. Zelda, lovely for you to join us. But before we get on to the interview, what's this obsession with you and your family with motorbikes?
Well, I've published a photo in the book. Actually, it goes back to my father's mother, who loved motorbike riding. I mean, in the 40s, 30s, 40s, that wasn't a very popular thing.
Was she a Hell's Angel?
No, not really a Hell's Angel. But she loved motorbikes. My father loved motorbikes, and on my mother's side, her father loved motorbikes. So it must be in the blood.
Have you got a motorbike?
Yes, of course, of course.
What kind of motorbike have you got?
I've got a big boy now, a BMW 1200 liquid cool adventure. Yeah.
So do you drive that to work, or did you drive it to work?
No, never. No, I didn't. I don't use it for commuting at all. It's too dangerous on these roads. I use it for touring and long distance driving. Yeah.
Oh, magnificent. Zelda, it's almost a year to the day that Nelson Mandela died. You spent half your life, literally, as an assistant to him. You met celebrities, you met diplomats, you traveled. How have you filled that gap in your life?
It's a very strange occurrence, I must be honest with you, because suddenly the focus, my life revolved around him, and suddenly that's gone, and the focus now, after the publication of my book, has moved to me, my schedule, my movements, my promoting the book. It's a very different life, and I miss the focus on someone else. It's very difficult to step into that space of focusing on yourself.
Will you ever be able to fill that gap?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
It's going to be a phase of your life that just move on.
Yes, after a year, I must be honest with you, I still haven't come to terms with the reality of this man is really gone. Where is that 19 years? Was I that privileged to have known him, to have worked with him for 19 years? It's something that I still can't comprehend fully.
How did you get involved? Here's a little Afrikaans girl. I presume you're from Pretoria.
Of course.
And why did you choose to go into government service? I mean, particularly at a time where you knew there were changes coming.
Well, my first job was in 1992 when I worked for state expenditure. And beyond that, in 1994, then when I applied for a job in the union buildings, it was really because of a logistical issue I tried to resolve. My parents lived in the north. I was still living with them at the time. The department moved to Centurion. It was far from home. And I didn't feel up to the commuting every day, so I applied for a job in the union buildings. Now, that's when fate, I think, possibly took over, and that's how I ended up with Madiba.
Were your family ever involved in government at all? Or?
Not at all. My mother was a teacher, so involved in government, but indirectly through the education department, but that was it.
And did you find resistance when you came in? Things were changing.
From yes, in 1994, you felt kind of out of place. I immediately noticed that there were not a lot of white faces in my immediate environment. There was one or two, but it was a different world for me. Not having dealt with black people before in senior positions, it was a cultural shock to me. But resistance from their side, no, never. I felt accepted immediately, and people really embraced me as part of the team. They didn't have to, but they did.
Did you find it difficult? I mean, coming from a background, an Afrikaans background, here was the government going forward. And you might have to adjust your thoughts and sometimes even your attitudes. Yes, it was, of
course, a very long process. And meeting Madiba for the first time, about 2 weeks into my job in the presidency, I realized that I needed to question my own belief system. I needed to learn about the history of my own country. So that was the start of a very long process of self-awareness, and coming to terms with what I was brought up to believe.
Did you click immediately, or was it?
No, not immediately. It took probably a good 2 years for me to get to know the history and what really happened and the reasons.
Zelda, one thing that, when I say bothers me, it's I suppose it doesn't only apply to you. You're working for a great man. There are huge demands. How does that impact? You're a young person, or you were a young person. I'm not saying you're old at the moment, but you're a young person starting your life. How did that impact on your social life? You know, and if I was your boyfriend and I'm phoning you up and you're off here and all over the place, and that eventually I say, I can't take this, I'm gone. Do you think it interfered with your social life?
Interfere, maybe the right choice of word here. Yes, I definitely think it did. But what a privilege for it to interfere then. I wouldn't change anything if I could have the last 19 years over. I wouldn't change it for anything, because there was only going to be one person that had this opportunity with Madiba. And if you compare his sacrifices and you compare my life, or you compare the two lives, it would be very, very conceited to even think that you could compare my sacrifices, if you then want to call it sacrifices, to what he's gone through. So it's just been a privilege, and I'm indebted forever for having had that opportunity of exposure with him for 19 years.
And taking that, I mean, you were obviously very close. I mean, to work for a person for 19 years, and I think your book recalls the very special tenderness you had together and your very special love. How would he have felt today? I mean, did he ever discuss this? We've got an ANC that's going completely away from the values that he instituted in '94. Did he ever discuss it? Did he ever express it, or harbour any thoughts about where they were going?
That's the thing about my book. I cannot put words in his mouth or try and imagine what he would have said now. The two important things to me, firstly, he was a very, very loyal member of the ANC, and no matter the change we may observe now, he would never have left the ANC. He may not have agreed with everything, but he would never have parted with the party who produced him. That's the important thing. But with my book, the simplicity of the story, the simplicity of the lessons, the anecdotes in my book gives you a very good indication of how he felt about corruption or dishonesty or discipline or respect. And those are the three lessons I take from him. It's about discipline, respect, and integrity. Now, take these simple anecdotes and draw your own conclusions. Basically, and that's why I say to you, I can't put words in his mouth, but I can share my story and leave it to the reader to decide how he would have felt.
What were your special moments traveling? I mean, what do you recall? What are the first thoughts that come? Who did you love when you traveled, and who did you want to see?
Well, you mean heads of state?
Heads
and
of
people.
state. I mean,
you know, when
you have
Madiba,
a wonderful catalogue of photographs.
Yes,
I mean, that's there. Which is,
they are there, but you know, it loses its charm after a while, and you see people for their humanity. And of course, we always loved seeing the Clintons. But Madiba became so special in himself, every moment with him, that it didn't really matter who the other role players were at a later stage. It was, you know, I always waited for him to crack a joke, even in Buckingham Palace. You were always in anticipation of his next step, so that you knew there was going to be something humorous in everything he said. So that becomes so special that you forget about the celebrity status or the importance of other people around you.
Was he just natural? I mean, he didn't fear anything. He just was the person that he was.
Yes, and with that bit of stubbornness and you know, traveling to the Middle East countries, he would defy rules and regulations by forcing this woman into places where she wasn't supposed to be.
As you woman, you mean yourself?
Myself, yes, but insisting that this is his secretary and he will take her into areas where women were not allowed, because that was a way of enforcing you know, this mutual respect for one another.
Did you feel threatened at all in instances like that?
No, I always kind of knew that I was safe with him, you know.
And you took care of his diet naturally as well. I love the way that you say that he enjoyed exercise and was very conscious of that, and that you'd have to buy medicine balls all over the place. And
yes, I can tell you where to find a medicine ball anywhere in the world. Yes, he was very rigid with his exercise and being healthy and eating the right things, and people are surprised, but I cannot tell you about one day, not on one day in 19 years, did I ever see him eating a piece of chocolate or crisps, you know, chips. I never ever saw him eating those things. He didn't snack at all. He would rather than eat nuts if he had to. He wasn't fond of bread or starch. So he was very, very disciplined, a very disciplined eater, and that's of course why he was healthy until such a late age.
And Zelda, yourself, where do you see yourself next year when this all settles down and that? What's in your head? I mean, you've had a wonderful experience.
I've had, and the book has brought about a new life for me altogether. I'm doing quite a bit of international travel next year with the book. At this point, I must be honest with you, I'm looking forward to just being at home for 1 week, 7 days consecutively, and actually getting bored at home. I don't know. I've also learned that there's no need or use in trying to force anything in life. You know, what is supposed to happen will happen. Life will take its course with me now, and I'm happy to just follow.
So where's your next motorbike trip?
Well, I'll continue to do Bikers for Mandela Day every year, and I hope we'll go to the Western Cape next year and take a bit of a longer route and do some really changing or life-changing things in smaller communities in the Western and Southern Cape.
Zelda, we have to cut it short here. I know we can talk for all 500 pages in your book. I'm sure you've got so many stories to share with us. But you are a very privileged person to have spent the kind of time you did with a man, I think, who is loved worldwide and who will probably continue to be thought of that way. Thank you very much for joining us. You've been on the couch with David Shapiro and Zelda La Grange.